As we move deeper into November, into that soft twilight of the year when the nights settle earlier and the world feels like it's holding its breath, our focus turns towards something deeply personal, deeply necessary, and beautifully transformative. Reflecting on the year. And I don't mean reflection as a checklist of accomplishments, not as a performance review where you grade yourself on invisible standards, not as a highlight reel of triumphs or a catalog of regrets you wish you could burn. I'm talking about reflection as a journey into the landscape of your experience. The hills, the valleys, the storms, the blooms, approached with compassion, curiosity, presence, and breath. The kind of reflection that lets you sit with yourself as you truly are, not as you think you should be. This week's Sanskrit word is Samiksha, reflection, observation, and compassionate review. A soft, steady gaze inward. Not judgment, not self-blame, not replaying your past like a punishment loop. Samiksha is reflection as understanding, reflection as truth-telling, reflection as healing, reflection as becoming. Because, here's the thing, y'all. The year leaves fingerprints on us. Every joy, every heartbreak, every lesson, every miracle, even the ones we didn't recognize as miracles at that time. And Samiksha invites us to trace those fingerprints slowly, reverently, without rushing to make sense of them, without forcing them to tell a certain story. Tonight, we're going to talk honestly about what reflection really is and what it is not. We are going to explore why it matters, not in an academic sense, but in that soul-deep way where your breath loosens and your shoulders drop because your body finally feels seen. We'll talk about how reflection works in the physical body, how your nervous system stores the year like layers of sediment, how breath work and mindful movement bring those layers to the surface, and how compassion helps you sift through them gently. We're also going to talk about how reflection shows up in witchcraft, in divination, in ancestral work, in shadow practice, in spellcraft that asks, what pattern am I still carrying, and do I want to? Because magic built without reflection is just reaction. But magic built with Samiksha, that's transformation. So settle in, my witchlings, light your candle, wrap yourself in something soft, and let's walk together into this sacred space where the past isn't a weight, it's a doorway. Bird chilly. And my hoodie is too far to wear. In our busy lives, it is so easy to sprint from one experience to the next without ever stopping long enough to breathe, let alone integrate what the moment was trying to teach us. We move from crisis to crisis, joy to joy, task to task, as if becoming fully human is something that happens automatically instead of intentionally. And the truth is, it doesn't. Growth isn't automatic. Healing isn't automatic. Understanding isn't automatic. That's why reflection, especially through the lens of Samiksha, matters so deeply. Samiksha invites us to slow down enough to meet ourselves where we actually are, not where we pretend to be for the world, not where we wish we were, not where the old versions of us still cling to outdated narratives, but here, right now, in the truth of this moment. When we reflect with compassion and curiosity, a few powerful things begin to happen. We finally see our progress. We are so accustomed to pushing forward that we rarely ever realize just how far we've already come. We don't notice how many old patterns we've broken, how many cycles we've interrupted, how many difficult conversations we've survived, or how many times we chose healing when hurting would have been so much easier. Reflection lets you pause, turn around, and say, "Oh, wow, I walked through that." That's not ego. That's acknowledgement. We learn from our challenges. Struggle is not failure, it's information. Every hardship, every heartbreak, every moment when the ground fell out from under you was also carrying a message. When you reflect with Samiksha, you're not digging for blame, you're looking for wisdom. You're extracting the medicine from the wound. You're asking, what did this teach me? Instead of, why wasn't I better? We celebrate our wins. Witchlings, we are terrible at celebrating ourselves. We move the goalpost, minimize our efforts, or rush on to the next task without even taking a breath. Reflection brings you back to those victories, the tiny ones, the quiet ones, the unexpected ones. The moments you were brave, you were kind, when you chose peace. You deserve to honor those, every single one. We release what doesn't serve. You cannot carry everything with you into the next cycle. Some habits, beliefs, relationships, or expectations simply don't fit the person you're becoming. Reflection helps you see what you're still gripping out of fear, obligation, guilt, or muscle memory. Samiksha gently asks, is this mine to carry anymore? And if the answer is no, you can lay it down with grace. We clarify our intentions. Who you were in January might not be who you are in November. And that's a good thing. It means you've lived. Reflection shows you who you've become and what matters now and where your energy actually wants to go. When you know who you are right now, you can set intentions that reflect the truth of your heart rather than the ghost of an old version of you. And perhaps most importantly, we cultivate self-compassion. Reflection is not about picking yourself apart or performing self-improvement like a sport. It's about honoring your humanity, the messy parts, the tender parts, and the parts that we're learning as they went. Samiksha is the practice of holding your own story with gentleness, not rewriting it, not judging it, but seeing it clearly and lovingly. When we reflect through this lens, something alchemical happens. The narrative shifts. Instead of spiraling into, what did I do wrong? The questions become softer, wiser. What did this teach me? What did I learn? How did I grow? What do I want to carry forward? What can I lovingly leave behind? Who am I now because of this? Those are some very good questions to ask yourself. Reflection becomes wisdom. Wisdom becomes alignment. Alignment becomes peace. And that peace, that quiet, spacious, grounded sense of self is what lets you walk into your next cycle of your life with clarity rather than chaos. When you practice Samiksha, you stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop abandoning yourself and start returning home. So, Witchlings, This is why reflection matters. Not because you need to fix anything, not because you need to judge anything, but because you deserve to understand your own story. And because becoming yourself fully, honestly, unapologetically is a sacred act. Let's take a sip. Samiksha. We're working on the pronunciation. Samiksha isn't about rewriting the past or obsessively replaying it. It's not about mentally pacing in circles around every choice you made or didn't make. And it is most definitely not about sitting in the dark, cataloging every little thing you wish you'd done differently. Dear gods, is it not? Samiksha is the gentle act of witnessing your truth with clarity. It's not a spotlight, harsh, glaring, and interrogative. It's a lantern. A warm, steady little flame you hold up to illuminate your own story. Softly, kindly, without burning yourself in the process. In yogic philosophy, Samiksha is clarity without distortion. It's the ability to see what is, not the version your inner critic wrote, not the version shaped by fear, trauma, or expectation, but the truth in its simplest form. It is perspective without punishment, understanding without the need to assign blame, and awareness without self-attack. Think of it like cleaning a mirror. The reflection was always there, you're just wiping away the fog. But the fog here is old stories, guilt, shame, assumptions, inherited narratives, outdated identities, all of those things that make it hard to see ourselves clearly. Samiksha doesn't ask you to break the mirror or sculpt a new one. It simply asks you to look honestly and gently at what's already there. And that shift from judgment to awareness can change your entire relationship with your past. Because let's get real here. Most of us don't reflect. We ruminate. We spiral. We overanalyze. We relive. We re-injure ourselves with memories that were never meant to be weapons. Guilty. Samiksha turns reflection into a healing practice rather than a self-harm ritual. Instead of, why did I screw up? It becomes, what was I trying to protect? Instead of, I should have known better. It becomes, I did the best I could with who I was and what I knew. Instead of, oh God, look how messy I was. It becomes, look how I survived. Look how I adapted. Look how I grew. That's reflection as compassion, as liberation. And the beauty of it is that it isn't theoretical, it's embodied. Your body remembers what your mind refuses to look at. Your breath tells the truth long before your words do. Your shoulders, jaw, hips, heart, they all carry the emotional sediment of the year. Sometimes reflection looks like journaling, but sometimes, sometimes, my witchlings, it looks like bawling in the shower, staring at the moon, or finally unclenching muscles you didn't even realize were clenched. Samiksha honors those physical truths too. In yoga, the body is considered a vessel for consciousness. Every emotion creates a ripple. Every experience imprints itself. Reflection is the process of gently reading those imprints, not to label them good or bad, but to understand what they meant and what they still hold. And in witchcraft, Samiksha shows up all the frickin' time. We just don't always name it. It's the moment before you pull a card when you center yourself enough to ask the real question. It's the pause at your altar when you whisper the truth you've been avoiding. It's the brutal honesty required for shadow work, not as punishment, but as reclamation. And it's the clarity that lets you see your patterns before you pour energy into a spell. Magic without Samiksha, is just reaction. Magic with Samiksha is intention. And that intention is powerful. It is grounding, centering, and protective. It keeps you from casting spells out of panic, fear, anger, or wounded pride. It turns your practice into an act of alignment rather than impulse. Samiksha says, I trust myself enough to look honestly. I love myself enough to be gentle. I value myself enough to understand rather than judge. The moment you approach reflection from that place, everything softens. You stop bracing. You stop performing. You stop apologizing for being human. And you begin to witness yourself, your whole self, with the compassion you've always deserved. This is why Samiksha is such a sacred part of the yogic path. It's not about erasing the past or spiritually bypassing the messy parts. It's about allowing your past to speak without letting it define you. It's about allowing your memories to breathe without suffocating under them. It's about allowing your truth to rise without forcing it to be anything other than what it is. Reflection becomes a conversation, not a courtroom. A lantern, not a spotlight. A doorway, not a wall. So when I talk about Samiksha tonight, I'm not talking about rules or perfection. I'm talking about seeing yourself clearly enough to grow, gently enough to heal, honestly enough to transform. And witchlings, that kind of reflection, that's magic. When I first started working with Samiksha this week, my body did what it always does when I approach reflection. It braced. My shoulders tightened like they were preparing for impact. My breath got shallow, almost imperceptible, and my stomach did that familiar little flip-flop twist, the one that says, uh-oh, we're about to dig into the hard stuff. And underneath all of that physical tension were the old patterns, the echoes of younger versions of me whispering, this is gonna hurt. Because for so many years, reflection meant self-judgment. It meant revisiting moments I was ashamed of or replaying mistakes that I thought I should have avoided. It meant picking myself apart until there was nothing left but raw edges. But something different happened this time. Something I really didn't expect. When I let myself breathe, slowly, gently, like I was reassuring a frightened animal. The edges softened. When I unclenched my jaw and stopped bracing for emotional impact, the tension dissolved, just enough for something else to rise to the surface. And instead of rehashing mistakes or regrets, I started remembering moments I'm proud of. Not those big, flashy, Instagram-worthy moments. No. The quiet ones. Moments of strength that didn't look like strength at the time, like getting out of bed on those days where there just were no spoons. Moments of tenderness, like holding space for my family when I was the one who needed holding. Moments where my boundaries held firm, even though every single trauma response in my body was screaming to people please. Moments where I didn't give up, even when part of me absolutely wanted to. Moments where I showed up for myself in small, subtle, and powerful ways that I didn't fully recognize until now. And Witchlings, it really surprised me, because I am straight up used to the other kind of reflection. You know, the one that feels like interrogation. But this time, when I let myself soften, Samiksha met me with compassion instead of criticism. In that space, that soft, open, breathing space, reflection stopped being something harsh and became something profoundly healing. Samiksha whispered, "You don't have to carry this the same way anymore." There was something in that message, that gentle clarity, that hit me right in the chest. Because so much of what we carry out of habit. Old guilt, old shame, old stories about who we were or who we should have been. Old versions of ourselves that we have long since outgrown, but still drag along because we really don't realize we're allowed to set it down. In that moment, I realized I've been carrying weight that wasn't mine anymore. I have been holding myself accountable to standards created by someone other than me when I was younger, scared, unsupportive, and or just trying to survive. And those standards do not fit the woman I am today. Maybe you felt it too. Maybe you've approached reflection with fear because the past feels heavy, sharp, or just unfinished. Maybe your body tightens the same way mine did, not because you're weak, but because you've learned to associate looking back with hurting. But Samiksha offers another way, a way that doesn't involve tearing yourself apart or reliving wounds, a way that doesn't ask you to justify your past or explain your choices, a way that just simply says, look at yourself with gentleness. See the full picture, not just the parts you regret, and honor the moments you lived through, honor the strength it took to get here, and honor the lessons you learned with blood, breath, and tears. Samiksha showed me that reflection is not about punishing myself for the past. It's about acknowledging how far I have come. It reminded me that healing shows up in ways that we often overlook, in the boundaries we set, in the patterns we interrupt, in the days we choose rest over self-destruction, in the softness we offer ourselves after years and years and years of being hard, in the courage it takes to try again. And maybe you need to hear this, Witchling. Maybe you guys need to hear it just as much as I did. You don't have to carry your past the same way anymore. You don't have to brace for impact every time you turn inward. And you definitely don't have to see yourself through the eyes of who you used to be. Reflection can be spacious. It can be gentle. It can be supportive. It can be the place where you finally exhale and say, I am proud of myself. I am learning. I am growing. I am becoming. And that, my loves, is Samiksha in action. Time for a sip. Fuzzbutt is being Fuzzbutt tonight. All right, y'all. In witchcraft, reflection is not optional. It is not an afterthought. It is not the thing you do if you have time or if you remember when the moon is in the right phase. Reflection is an essential, non-negotiable part of the cycle. Just as important as intention setting, spell casting, grounding, shadow work, or release. A witch who does not reflect is a witch who does not grow. Let's repeat that again, just so it sinks in. A witch who does not reflect is a witch who does not grow. Because magic is not just energy directed outward. It is energy moving through you, shaping you, revealing you, and refining you. And if you never pause to witness what that energy has stirred up, you miss half the magic. Reflection in witchcraft is less about the outcome of the spell and more about the transformation happening behind the scenes. Such as, how did this intention shift me? Did it soften me, strengthen me, challenge me? Did it pull hidden fears to the surface or illuminate parts of me I'd forgotten? Did it expand my sense of possibility? What energy was I operating from? Was I casting from empowerment or from fear? From clarity or from desperation? From confidence or from where old wounds that were asking to be healed? Your intention may have been the same, but the energy beneath it tells the real story. What part of me was healing? Sometimes the magic works on the target, and sometimes the real target, est moi, is you. Sometimes the spell clears the obstacle, and sometimes it clears the emotional debris around it. Reflection lets you see which one has happened. What fear was I confronting? Because every spell reveals a fear of being seen, fear of not being enough, fear of change, fear of stagnation, fear of abandonment, fear of not being seen. Magic brings these to the surface not to punish you, but to transform you. What truth was I finally ready to see? This is the hardest one, because magic isn't subtle about truth. It smacks it right there in front of you. Reflection helps you meet that truth without running from it. When we skip reflection, we miss the whole inner alchemy of the craft. Magic isn't only found in the spell. It's found in the self-understanding that emerges afterward, in the shift you feel in your bones, the clarity that rises in your chest, and the sudden understanding of why something mattered so damn much. Reflection becomes your cauldron, where your experience and your intuition meet. Think about the classic spell cycle. You cleanse, you ground, you set your intention, you cast, you release, you ground again. But what happens after that? What happens inside you? That is what Samiksha lets you see. Because magic is cyclical, and your growth is cyclical too. A spell does not end when the candle burns out. It ends when you integrate the energy it set into motion. And that integration, that weaving of old self and new self, can only happen through reflection. So let me give you an example here. Let's say you cast a spell for protection. Most witches focus on whether it worked. Did the energy shift? Did the situation change? Did the person back off? Did the danger dissolve? reflection asks some deeper questions. Why did I need protection in the first place? Where did I ignore my intuition before the spell? What boundary did I allow to bend too far? What pattern am I still repeating here? Why did this situation feel so damn familiar? How do I protect myself proactively instead of reactively? Suddenly, the spell isn't just about protection. It's about self-honoring. It's about reclaiming trust in your instincts. It's about owning your boundaries. It's about healing the part of you that learned to stay quiet and or small. This is the true magic of reflection. It turns every spell into a lesson. It turns every intention into a doorway. It turns every ritual into initiation. I misread. It turns every ritual into an initiation into a deeper version of yourself. Reflection is where the witch grows. It's where you become more aligned, more intuitive, more intentional, more powerful. It's where you stop casting spells on autopilot and start crafting magic with depth. It's where your practice stops being aesthetic and becomes embodied. It's where your magic stops being reactive and becomes sovereign. And here's the thing, witchlings. Reflection is also a protective practice. When you reflect, you are less likely to cast from panic. You're less likely to pour your energy into situations that do not deserve it. You're less likely to repeat old patterns and call it fate. You're less likely to self-sabotage by misreading your own desires. Samiksha in Witchcraft is like tuning an instrument. You could play without tuning, sure, great, have at it, but it won't sound right. It won't feel right. And eventually, the discord becomes impossible to ignore. Reflection retunes you. It aligns you. It sharpens your intuition, strengthens your magic, and deepens your connection to your craft. It says, I honor what I create. I honor what I learn. I honor who I become. Because in witchcraft, the spell is only half the story. The other half is the witch themselves. Cheers. Our bodies are always speaking. long before our minds ever catch up. We like to believe we're thinking our way through life, but if we are... Sorry. We like to believe we're thinking our way through life, but if we're honest, the body always knows first. Your shoulders tell the truth before your voice does. Your breath shifts before your thoughts do. Your stomach drops before your logic kicks in. Your jaw tightens before you can articulate why. Your chest opens before you consciously recognize safety. This is why Samiksha, compassionate reflection, is so powerful in yoga. Because yoga is not a mind-first practice. It is a body-first practice. And the body does not lie. On the mat, everything becomes information. The pause between postures becomes insight. We tend to focus on the asana themselves, but the truth is, the magic is often in the transformations. The moment you hesitate, or the moment you rush, the moment you resist. That teeny tiny pause reveals where your body is negotiating with your heart. Your breath becomes a guide. Your breath will tell you every single everything you need to know. Where you're holding fear, where you're forcing effort, where you're rushing ahead, where you're abandoning yourself. Your inhale reveals your willingness to receive, and your exhale reveals your capacity to release. Sensation becomes information. Tightness isn't failure, it's communication. Shaking isn't weakness, it's energy moving. Heat isn't punishment, it's activation. Sensation is the vocabulary your body uses to speak to you. Stillness becomes clarity. When the movement stops, the truth arrives. Stillness is where your nervous system speaks up and says, hey, here's what we're actually dealing with. That's why stillness can feel uncomfortable, because clarity can be uncomfortable. The body reflects honestly, not politely, not strategically, not intellectually. It doesn't try to protect your ego or preserve your narratives. It simply tells the truth. And it speaks through tension, the places in your body gripping where you're still gripping an old story. It speaks through release, the moment your body finally believes you are safe. Through openness, the areas of your life ready for expansion. Through resistance, the boundaries you still need. Expansion, the parts of you stepping into the next version of yourself. And it speaks through contraction, the parts of you contracting because they need reassurance, not force. When you learn to listen to your body, you learn to listen to your life. Here's an example. Oh God, there are days when I step onto the mat and my hamstrings are so tight, my hips feel guarded, and my breath ain't great. If I'm not reflecting, I might judge that, I feel stiff and sore today. But when I practice Samiksha on the mat, the conversation shifts. Tight hamstrings? I've been rushing too much. I haven't taken the time to slow down. Guarded hips? Something emotional is asking for space. Shallow breath? Woof, we've been living in survival mode for a while. Suddenly, my practice becomes a mirror, not for how good my posture is, but for how tenderly I'm caring for myself. And this, my darlings, is where yoga and witchcraft meet. Both are somatic practices, both rely on presence, both ask you to read the language of the body, the breath, the energy, the intuition. Both ask you to become fluent in the quiet truths beneath the mental noise. Reflection in the body is the most honest form of reflection you will ever experience. Because your body doesn't care how you think you handled something. It knows how you felt handling it. The shoulders remember the burdens. Your spine remembers the boundaries you didn't hold. Your throat remembers the words you swallowed. Your belly remembers the fear. Your hips, the grief. Your jaw, the anger. Your heart remembers the love. And your lungs remember the moments when you finally let go. And your breath? The breath remembers everything. That's why Samiksha is not just a mental exercise. It is a somatic one. You're not asking, what happened this year? You're asking, where is it still living in my body? Where do I feel open? Where do I feel guarded? Where am I still bracing? Where am I finally softening? Where am I ready to grow? Reflection through the body is often the doorway to truths you didn't know how to say out loud. Sometimes you don't know you're grieving until your chest feels heavy in Shavasana. Sometimes you don't know you're angry until your shoulders burn in Warrior 2. Sometimes you don't know you're healing until your breath deepens without forcing it. Sometimes you don't know you're ready until your body reaches further than it ever did before. The mat makes all of this visible. It turns the invisible into something embodied, something undeniable, something you could work with lovingly, consciously, and patiently. But here's the most beautiful and amazing part. Your body always wants to heal. Always. Even when your mind resists, even when your heart hesitates, even when your past tries to drag your ass backward. Your body is constantly moving toward release, softness, openness, expansion, if you create the space for it. Reflection in the body is how you create that space. So, when you learn to listen to your body, you learn to listen to your intuition, your needs, your truth, and you learn to listen to your life. Because the body doesn't speak in stories. It speaks in sensations. And Samiksha teaches us how to truly, truly hear them. Let's talk about the year, because this year has been one hell of a teacher. Sorry. I'm being yelled at. Let's talk about the year, because this year has been one hell of a teacher. Sometimes it's been a gentle one, sometimes a chaotic one, sometimes a transformative one, sometimes all three in the same damn week. And when we look back at the year through this lens of Samiksha, we're not hunting for what we did wrong. We're not combing through memories like detectives trying to uncover the moment we, quote, should have known better. We're not grading ourselves on standards we never agreed to. We're honoring what we lived through. We're honoring the truth of our experience, our effort, our growth, and the truth of our survival. Because this year taught you something, probably more than one something, and maybe some of those lessons were gentle, delivered in a whisper, and maybe some of them were carved into you by fire. But either way, they shaped you. Maybe you learned how strong you are. Not the kind of strength that looks pretty, but the kind that shows up when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, grieving, or scared, and you still take that next breath anyway. Maybe you learned what you won't tolerate anymore. The boundaries that were crossed, the energy that drained you, the people who showed you exactly who they are. Maybe this year taught you what your soul is no longer available for. Maybe, just maybe, you learned how to rest. Truly rest. Not collapse, not burnout, not the forced stillness that comes when you have run yourself into the ground, but the kind of rest that nourishes. The kind that says, I deserve softness. Maybe you learned how to say no. Even when your voice shook, your guilt whispered in your ear, and even when the old version of you would have just said yes to keep the peace. Maybe this year taught you who actually shows up for you. The people who love you in ways that feel steady, grounded, and real. The ones who don't just want access to you, but the ones who actually give a flying frog about your well-being. Maybe this year you learned how brave you are. Brave in the quiet ways, not the cinematic ones. Brave in the choices you made in the dark. And in those moments when no one else saw. Maybe you learned what healing feels like in real time. messy, nonlinear, uncomfortable, and miraculous. Maybe you noticed the tiny shifts, the places where your reactions softened, where your boundaries held, where your heart stayed open just a little bit, a breath longer than before. And maybe, just maybe, you learned that you are softer, wiser, and more resilient than you were at the start of this cycle. And if not softer, then clearer. Wiser, maybe more honest. If not resilient, then maybe just still standing. And that counts. This is the heart of reflection. Not perfection, but perspective. Not the question, did I do everything right? But the deeper question, what did this year reveal about me? Because reflection isn't about the events, it's about the evolution. It's about who you became, who you are becoming, and who you're no longer willing to be. So let's walk through the year gently, together. What surprised you? Not just the moments that blindsided you, but the moments you rose to the occasion in ways you didn't expect. The choices you made that older versions of you wouldn't have believed even possible. What challenged you? Where did you feel stretched, pressured, tested? And what did those challenges show you about your strength, fears, limits, and your needs? What ended this year? Relationships, habits, cycles, identities, dreams, illusions. Endings carry enormous wisdom. What did letting go teach you about yourself? What began this year? New paths you stepped onto, new boundaries, new creativity, new confidence, new softness, new trust. Where did you surprise yourself? What did you handle better than expected? What did you walk away from? What did you walk toward? What did you forgive? What did you try for the very first time? Where did you grow? Growth is often microscopic, tiny shifts that only become obvious in retrospect. A quieter reaction, a braver choice, an easier boundary, a softer self-talk. Where did you stay the same? And is that sameness stability or stagnation? Is it comfort or fear? These questions are the threads of Samiksha, not judgment, not interrogation, just truth, just understanding. Reflection is an act of honoring your lived experience, even the parts you wish had gone differently, because every moment you lived through shaped your nervous system, your intuition, your resilience, your clarity, and your magic. Every single moment mattered. This year, you navigated things you didn't plan for. You carried weight no one saw. You made decisions without a roadmap. You walked through doorways that didn't even exist last year. You shed skins that you'd been wearing for decades. You healed in places you didn't know were still wounded. You loved. You lost. You tried again. You rested. You survived. And that matters. That counts. Reflection is where you give yourself credit for the things you never said out loud. It's where you acknowledge the battles no one else knew you were fighting. It's where you validate your own experience instead of waiting for someone else to do it. And here's something else we don't talk about enough. Sometimes the biggest transformation of the year is simply that you are still here. You're still breathing, still growing, still learning, still becoming. Sometimes that's the victory. Reflection doesn't ask you to rewrite your year or romanticize it. It asks you to see it clearly, lovingly, truthfully. It asks you to hold your own story with tenderness. It asks you to honor what was difficult without letting it define you. It asks you to celebrate what was beautiful without diminishing it. It asks you to integrate what was transformative without rushing on to the next thing. This is Samiksha. This is reflection with compassion. This is the alchemy of turning lived experience into embodied wisdom. And as you look back on this year, not through the eyes of who you were, but through the eyes of who you are right now, I want you to ask yourself, what did this year teach me about my strength, about my boundaries, about love? What did it teach me about trust, about healing? What did it teach me about who I'm becoming? Because you are becoming. Every breath, every lesson, every heartbreak, every joy, they are shaping you. Reflection lets you see the shape. Reflection gives you the perspective to understand what the year carved into you and what it carved out of you. And Witchlings, you have grown more than you realize, more than you've named, far more than you've allowed yourself to believe. This year was a teacher, and you, in all of your softness, fire, messiness, and wisdom, you were the student who kept showing up. And that right there is worth honoring. Here's the truth I want you guys to carry from this episode. The soft, steady truth. The one that meets you like warm hands on your shoulders. Reflection isn't the burden. Avoidance is. We spend so much energy trying not to look at what hurts, not to acknowledge what's shifting, not to name the one thing that keeps tugging at the edge of our awareness. We think ignoring it will protect us. We think pretending we're fine will keep everything from collapsing. We think silence is safer. But avoidance isn't safety. Avoidance is stagnation. Avoidance is the backpack full of stones that you keep lugging around because you're too afraid to open it up and pour half of them out. Avoidance is the emotional knot that gets tighter the longer you refuse to touch it. Avoidance is the thing that whispers, not now, not yet, maybe never, even though your body is aching for relief. Reflection, on the other hand, isn't what exhausts us. Holding everything inside is what exhausts us. The late nights replaying conversations you didn't finish. The tight shoulders carrying months of unspoken emotions. The shallow breath you didn't notice until you finally exhaled. The tears your body swallowed because your mind told you they were inconvenient. That's where the exhaustion comes from. The weight of everything you refuse to lay down. Reflection doesn't demand that you fix it. It simply asks you to face it. And facing something lovingly, honestly, and without judgment is often what allows your whole system to finally release its grasp. It's what lets your nervous system unclench. It's what lets your heart stop bracing for impact. It's what lets your breath deepen again. Reflection doesn't reopen wounds. It helps them breathe. Wounds do not heal when they're hidden. They heal when they're tended. When the bandage is lifted gently. When the air touches them. When you acknowledge, yes, this hurt, and yes, I survived it. Reflection is the moment you sit down beside your own pain and say, I see you. I'm not afraid of you. I am here. That presence alone is medicine. Reflection doesn't drag you backwards. It helps you step forward with clarity. Looking back is not regression, not when you do it with Samiksha. It's integration, it's gathering the lessons, patterns, and truths so you don't carry confusion into the next chapter. It's the difference between stumbling forward in the dark and walking forward with a lantern in your hand. Because Samiksha is not about reliving the past, it's about understanding it. Understanding where you've grown, understanding where you're still tender, understanding what you need, understanding who you're becoming, understanding what no longer belongs in your story. Reflection with Samiksha softens you. It prepares you. It clears the fog. It aligns your next step with your truth, not your fear. So here's the soft truth again, Witchlings. Reflection is not something to dread. It is something to welcome, gently, slowly, with breath. Because when you reflect with compassion, you don't fall apart. You come home. Thank you, my Witchlings, for entering the cauldron with me tonight. Truly. Thank you for choosing to sit with your own heart, even for this little over an hour. Thank you for choosing clarity over criticism, wisdom over worry, and compassion over judgment. That choice is not always easy, but you made it, and I'm proud of you all for that. As we wind down the year, this wild, intense, surprising, exhausting, and illuminating year, my wish for you is simple. May Samiksha be your soft lantern. Not a harsh spotlight, not a blinding glare, just a warm, steady glow that helps you see yourself clearly and kindly. A light bright enough to guide you, but gentle enough not to hurt your eyes. May your reflection be kind. Not because you've earned kindness, but because you are worthy of it simply by existing. May you remember that compassion isn't a reward, it's a birthright. And you do not need to be perfect. And you don't need to be perfect to deserve it. I can talk. May your heart be gentle with itself. You've carried so much this year, more than anybody knows, more than you've said out loud, more than your body should have had to hold. Let your heart loosen its grip. Let it soften around the places that still ache. Let it celebrate the parts of you that made it through. And may your next breath, the one you're taking right now, carry you into the next cycle with strength, softness, and truth. Not strength as armor. Not strength as armor, but strength as rootedness. Not softness as weakness, but as openness. Not truth as judgment, but truth as freedom. You are loved. Not conditionally, not occasionally, not only when you shine, but deeply, steadily, wholly. You are wanted. Your presence in this world is not an accident. Your voice, your energy, your existence creates ripples you can't always see. You are needed. Your story, your healing, your magic, they matter. And you have a purpose here, even if you haven't discovered the whole story yet. Purpose doesn't always show itself in big revelations. Sometimes it comes in tiny little moments, in kindness, courage, connection, and breath. And each one of those counts. So, as you step out of this sacred space tonight, please know this. You are not alone. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are becoming. And I am honored to walk beside you on this path as your guide, your witchy friend, your yoga companion, your fellow traveler navigating the mystery of it all. So go out there and spread love, joy, and kindness, and make sure that the ones you love know it. Until next time, my witchlings, blessed be and namaste.